All right, our second president of the chapter, Gerald Ford. We'll cover Mr. Ford, President Ford, in this very short presentation. I believe it's only 3 or 4 slides. Again, President Ford became president, as you can see here, in 1974, when Richard Nixon resigned in August of 74. Ford is sworn in, and he served until January of 77 when Jimmy Carter became president. Ford ran for and lost the presidency in 76 against Jimmy Carter, then Governor Carter of Georgia, and then President Carter. Anyway, some images here. We have in the upper right, Ford takes office at one of the local papers. Here we have a look at OPEC, and you can see all the countries there that are part of OPEC. Gas shortages, some economic issues dealing from the oil embargo. The first one, there are several of them. The one we most commonly think of when we think of the oil embargo is the one that happened during the Jimmy Carter presidency, but there's a couple others prior to that, and caused gas prices to skyrocket. And as you can see here, limited the amount of gallons a person can buy at one time. And keep in mind, even though you're looking at a Volkswagen there in front of you, most cars were much larger. They had much larger gas tanks. So 10 gallons of gas, if you only averaged about 12 or 13 miles a gallon, is going to get you very far. And here's a little bit of political cartoon showing essentially you're just pumping money from your wallet into your car. Anyway, and there's, of course, a picture of President Ford right down there. All right, well, let's move forward with our next slide. And there we go, get the whole thing loaded up. And I'm sort of waiting for this to load up. I'm trying to do some things, but it is going rather slowly. You know what, we'll just take a look at this. I'm having some problems with my board there. There we go. Okay. So, President Gerald Ford, and as I have mentioned to you before, Gerald Ford became VP under Nixon when Spiro Agnew resigned. We talked about that in a previous video. And when Nixon resigns from office, Ford, who is his VP, becomes president. So we have Nixon resign, Ford becomes the next president. This is all part of the 25th Amendment. It's happened numerous times before, but never for a president resigning. It always for a president dying in office. Ford had not been elected as VP. He had been appointed by Nixon after Spiro Agnew, the VP that was first elected with Nixon, had been forced to resign. And we covered this previously. So Ford is the first president to not be elected to the office of president or the office of vice president. One of the first acts that Ford did, one of the first things that Ford did while he was president was to pardon Nixon for any crimes that Nixon may have committed. You got to keep in mind the act of pardoning someone is a power that is solely in the hands of the president. There is no judicial oversight. There's no congressional oversight. It is whomever, whenever the president wants. President Obama, as an example today, wanted to free every person in the jails across America. He could pardon them all. And nothing can be done about it because that is a power given to him and solely to him by the U.S. Constitution. And needless to say, the pardon was not popular. A lot of people, particularly in the media and the Democrat Party, wanted to see Nixon tried for his crimes. They wanted to see him perp walk. They wanted to see him handcuffed, let in and out of the courtroom. They wanted to see him go to jail. However, President Ford felt Nixon, keep in mind, Nixon is the one who chose Ford to be VP, and when Nixon resigns, Ford becomes president. So he does kind of owe Nixon a little bit. Nixon had suffered enough, according to Ford, and he wanted the country to be able to heal itself. And again, he felt the country had suffered a great deal already. I mean, he thought that Nixon was a pretty good president, as many people did prior to Watergate. And the loss of a president, the upsetting of the economy and the judicial system and the the change at the top created quite a stormy atmosphere within the United States. And Ford felt that Nixon had suffered enough and that his suffering would not really be enhanced by going to trial. In addition, it would hurt America in the eyes of the world. So Ford felt it was the best thing that Nixon is pardoned and he kind of goes away. That way Ford, his executive branch, Congress, and the court system could move forward. And that's the reason why he pardoned Nixon. Now, as he did that, as you can well imagine, a lot of people didn't like it, and a lot of people felt that that was the reason why he lost the 1976 election to Jimmy Carter. Before we get to that, President Gerald Ford, there's some worries he had. Number one, we do have the fall of Saigon in '75. Again, he becomes president in August of '74. Less than a year, Saigon has fallen. The South Vietnamese, as their city is being attacked, are screaming for help. Ford goes to Congress. Congress denies him, and he has to sort of sit by and watch as our former ally, the South Vietnamese, fall under communist control. And that's one thing. Most of Ford's worries, however, most of the main worries that Ford had were economic ones. And this is partially due to what we refer to as stagflation. We've talked about this before, but stagflation is a term that we use. Part of it comes from inflation. Inflation, of course, general rise in prices. Now, rising prices, inflation can be a good thing when it's associated with economic growth and full unemployment. If you have a strong, growing economy, there is a demand for goods. A demand for goods causes the prices to rise, hence inflation. So inflation can be a sign of a healthy, strong economy when you have, and I think the key right here is that full unemployment. Unfortunately, stagflation, which is what we had under Ford and continuing under Carter, was inflation, but with high unemployment. So you combine high unemployment with inflation, and that gives us stagflation. During the Ford presidency, stagflation dominated our economy. And here you can see a couple of charts. You see the economic growth of America going downward and inflation going upward. Okay, so slowing economic growth, high inflation, high unemployment, these things lead to stagflation. Ford in the energy crisis. Now, President Ford, again, was not a lucky man in some ways. He inherited a mess. He inherited a Congress that was hostile. Again, the Congress was dominated by Democrats. Ford was a Republican. He was the VP chosen by Nixon. Nixon resigned in disgrace. The media was extremely hostile toward him, particularly after he pardoned President Nixon. And so, again, he had a lot of things going on that he could have used congressional help. He could have used the media's help, but they weren't very friendly toward him. And in many cases, worked against him. And so here we have the energy crisis. OPEC, which is an acronym for the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, OPEC. And here is a map showing you those countries. Primarily here in the Middle East, but there are a few in Africa and here in South America, Venezuela. In the 1960s, OPEC was formed by several of the oil-producing nations located mostly in, again, here you go, in the Middle East. And so these oil-producing nations created OPEC. The idea was to sort of give them more control over oil production, oil prices, so forth and so on. In 1973, OPEC used oil as a political weapon by placing an oil embargo on U.S. and Western European countries for supporting Israel in the Middle East war. So OPEC used oil as a political weapon by embargoing, meaning not selling us. They embargoed Western European countries. They embargoed the US of A. I'm having some problems with my drawing board. Let me restart it here. They decided to embargo those countries, USA and Western European countries. They embargoed us, did not sell us oil. Why did they do that? Because we, the United States and Western European countries, England, France, West Germany, for example, supported Israel in the war in the Middle East against OPEC nations, against Arabic Muslim nations. So they stopped selling us oil, and again, OPEC in the early 70s was the dominant oil supplier on the planet. Overnight, price of gas shot up. Now here you got a little of a joke in the bottom right-hand corner. For regular gas, it's an arm, and we're talking about the price right here. Make that a little bit different so we can see it right here. Regular price was an arm. For plus gas was a leg, and for premium gas, you would have to sell your firstborn. Prices shot up dramatically. I started to drive about this period of time. Gasoline prices within the first year or so I was driving more than doubled. When I first started driving, gas was about 55 cents, give or take. Within a year or so, it was $1.10 to $1.20. Now again, $1.20 today would be great, but you know, again, this is not then. Imagine oil prices, gasoline prices, because of the oil embargo, doubling today. I think I bought gas a few days ago for $1.80-ish or so. Imagine jumping overnight. I mean, we're talking real quickly, just within a day or two, shooting up to $3.60, $4 a gallon. It would cause all kinds of problems within our economy. Because again, many goods are made with oil, where oil is a main ingredient. All goods are transported with oil, whether it be diesel in the semis, whether it be oil used within the machinery that is producing the good. I mean, on and on and on. Oil is blood in a economic, industrialized, a capitalistic, industrialized nation like ours. When oil prices shot up, gas prices shot up, as did all other prices. Even after the war ended, OPEC continued with high prices, making them rich and costing us. Making them rich and costing us increased prices for fuel and electricity. So OPEC, and again, here are the OPEC nations. Let's take a quick look at that again. Clear that out. Okay. So here, primarily here, but again, you know, you got those three areas. Those are OPEC. You know, this is the main one right here. Not only did they hurt us by causing the prices of fuel and electricity, all that kind of stuff, to rise, they made themselves rich. All right. As I'm waiting for the next slide. Okay, I thought so. As I said, the Ford slide presentation was very short. We are done. There's only the 4 or 5 slides, whatever it was. We will continue with our next slide presentation over the Carter presidency. But for now, we're done.